Good morning, children. Today we shall be doing a topic in grammar. Our topic for today is direct and indirect speech. The English language has two ways to narrate the spoken words of a person. These two ways are as follows: direct speech and indirect speech. These two ways are usually used to convey a message of one person to another. When we quote the actual words of the speaker, we use direct speech. For example, Mr. David said, "I want to meet your parents." When we narrate what the speaker said without quoting exact words, we use indirect speech. For example, Mr. David said that he wanted to meet my parents. In direct speech, the exact words of the speaker are enclosed in inverted commas or quotation marks. There is always a comma after the word said that introduces the spoken words. For example, in this sentence, he said, "I am going to school." There is a comma that appears after the word said. The inverted commas encloses the spoken words of the speaker. In indirect speech, the actual words of the speaker are changed. The reason for the change in actual words is that the actual words have been spoken by the speaker in the past. Hence, narrating it in the present will require a change in the tense of the actual words. The words of the speaker are not enclosed in inverted commas or quotation marks. The word "that" will be used before the spoken words of the speaker. Look at the example given below. In direct speech, you have a sentence, "He said, I'm going to school." But when the sentence is said in an indirect speech, there is a change in the words. The sentence says, "He said that he was going to school." The comma after the word "said" is replaced in the indirect speech with the word "that." There is a change in the words. "I am going" becomes "was going" in the indirect speech. Reporting verb. The verb before the actual words of the speaker is called a reporting verb. Look at the sentence given below. She said, "I got a job in the college." In this sentence, the verb highlighted in green is called a reporting verb. It appears before the spoken words of the speaker. The words "I got a job in the college" is the reporting speech. These words are enclosed in the open and closed inverted comma. Look at another sentence given below. She says, "I want to become a doctor." In this sentence, the verb "says" is the reporting verb, and the words "I want to become a doctor," which is enclosed in the open and closed inverted commas, is called the reporting speech. Rules for converting direct speech into indirect speech. Rule number 1. Words of the speaker are not enclosed in inverted commas or quotation marks in indirect speech. Rule number 2. Use of the word "that." The conjunction that is always used between the reporting verb and reported speech in the indirect speech. Now look at the sentence displayed. Direct speech. Madhav says, I am gardening. In the indirect speech, the sentence is Madhav says that he is gardening. Look at the difference in both the sentences. In the direct speech, there is a comma and there are inverted commas. In the indirect speech, the comma is replaced by the word that and the inverted commas are removed. Rule number 3. Words or adverbs expressing nearness of time or place are changed into words expressing distance. For example, look at the table given below. In the direct speech, now becomes then in the indirect speech. Here becomes there. Ago becomes before. This becomes that. These becomes those. Today becomes that day. Tomorrow becomes the next day. Yesterday becomes the previous day or the day before. Last night becomes the night before or the previous night, and next week becomes the following week. Following are some examples. Direct speech. She said to him, I will meet you tomorrow. In the indirect speech, she told him that she would meet him the next day. You can see in the sentence, the word tomorrow in the direct speech changes to the next day in the indirect speech. The second example, direct speech. He said, I need your help now. In the indirect speech, he said that he needed my help then. Now becomes then. The last sentence, direct speech. She said, I am buying a laptop today. Indirect speech. She said that she was buying a laptop that day. Rule number 4. The pronoun or subject of the reported speech is sometimes changed according to the pronoun or object of the reported verb. That means the pronouns in the sentence will undergo a change. Look at the table displayed. In the direct speech, I will become he or she accordingly in the indirect speech. We becomes they, mine becomes his or hers, you becomes I, we or me, my becomes his or her, our becomes their, us becomes them, and your becomes his or her. Following are some examples that show a change in the pronoun. Direct speech. He said, I eat 2 apples. Indirect speech. He said that he ate 2 apples. In this sentence, you can see that I, the pronoun I, changes to the pronoun he in the sentence. The changes happen only in the reporting speech. The second example. The children said, we have arranged for a party. Indirect speech. The children said that they had arranged for a party. The pronoun we in the direct speech changes to they in the indirect speech. The last example, direct speech. Preeti said to me, "You can play with my new toy." Indirect speech. Preeti told me that I could play with her new toy. You can see in this sentence, you changes to I and my changes to her. Rule number 5. Change of tense. If the reporting verb is in the present or future tense, then the tense of the direct speech does not undergo any change. For example, look at the sentence given below. Sushma says, "I am not well." This is in the direct speech. The reporting verb says is in the present tense. Hence, when we change the sentence into indirect speech, there will be no change in the tense of the sentence. Sushma says that she is not well will be the sentence in the indirect speech. Look at the second example. Sangeeta will say, "My teacher loves me." This sentence is in the direct speech. Look at the reporting verb in this sentence. The reporting verb "will say" is in the future tense. Therefore, when we convert this sentence into indirect speech, there will be no change in the tense. The sentence will then be, "Sangeeta will say that her teacher loves her." The word "loves" remain the same in the same tense. Even in the first example, the verb "am", which is highlighted in red, is in the same present tense. The tense will not undergo any change. If the reporting verb is in the past tense, then the present tense in the direct speech changes to past tense in the indirect speech. Look at the sentence given below. They said there are very few samosas left in the plate. In this sentence, the verb "said" is the reporting verb which is in the past tense. Now look at the reporting speech. What is the reporting speech? There are very few samosas left in the plate. In this sentence, the verb "are" is in the present tense. Now, when we convert this sentence into an indirect speech, there will be a change in the verb of the reporting speech. The sentence becomes, "They said that there were few samosas left in the plate." You can see the change in the verb. The verb "are" changes to "were" in the indirect speech. Now look at the following examples. They are sentences where the reporting verb is in the past tense. The first sentence, he said, "My mother is knitting a sweater for you." This sentence is in the direct speech. The reporting verb in this sentence is in the past tense. When this sentence is converted into indirect speech, there is a change in the tense of the sentence. The sentence becomes, he said that his mother was knitting a sweater for you. The verb "is knitting" becomes "was knitting." The second example, she said she has won the contest. This sentence is in the direct speech. When converted into indirect speech, the sentence is, she said that she had won the contest. The verb "has won" becomes "had won." Now observe the changes of the tense while converting a sentence from a direct speech into an indirect speech. When the reporting verb is in the past tense, then all the present tenses in the direct speech are changed into the corresponding past tenses. The simple present tense becomes into simple past tense. For example, in the direct speech, she said, I write a letter. In this sentence, the verb write is in the simple present tense. But when we convert it into indirect speech, the verb will change to a simple past tense. She said that she wrote a letter. Next, the present continuous tense becomes into past continuous tense. For example, in the direct speech, he said, my master is writing a letter. The verb in the sentence is writing will become into a past continuous tense. He said that his master was writing a letter. Is writing becomes was writing. The present perfect tense becomes into past perfect tense. For example, in the direct speech, he said, I have passed the examination. In the indirect speech, the verb have passed will change. He said that he had passed the examination. The verb have passed will become had passed. Next, the present perfect continuous tense will turn into past perfect continuous tense. For example, in the direct speech, she said, I have been writing a letter. In the indirect speech, she said that she had been writing a letter. The verb have been writing, which is in the present perfect continuous tense, will change to had been writing, which is in the past perfect continuous tense. Next, the simple past tense will change into past perfect tense. For example, in the direct speech, she said, I wrote a letter. The verb wrote is in the past tense. In the indirect speech, she said that she had written a letter. In this sentence, the verb wrote will change into had written. The simple past becomes past perfect tense. Wrote becomes had written. If the direct speech is in the past continuous tense, then in the indirect speech, the tense will be in the past perfect continuous tense. For example, in the direct speech, she said, I was writing a letter. The verb in the sentence is was writing. In the indirect speech, the sentence will become, she said that she had been writing a letter. The verb was writing in the direct speech changes to had been writing in the indirect speech. Next, if the sentence is in the past perfect, there will be no change in the indirect speech. The tense of the sentence will remain the same only if the sentence is in the past perfect tense. For example, direct speech. She said, I had written a letter. In the indirect speech, our sentence will be, she said that she had written a letter. You can see that the verb had written in the direct speech remains the same in the indirect speech. Then we have the future tense. If the sentence in the direct speech is in the future tense, then the sentence in the indirect speech will become future conditional tense. For example, she said I will write a letter. In the indirect speech, she said that she would write a letter. The verb will in the direct speech changes to would in the indirect speech. Will change to would. In reporting questions. Now, when questions are asked in the direct speech, then the indirect speech is introduced by verbs such as asked or enquired. For example, direct speech. He said to me, "What are you doing?" In the indirect speech, the sentence will become, "He asked me what I was doing." The question mark in the direct speech is interchanged with the word asked in the indirect speech. Now, when the question is not introduced by an interrogative word or WH word, then the reporting verb is followed by whether or if in the indirect speech. Direct speech. The mother said to her son, "What are you doing?" In the indirect speech, the sentence will be, the mother asked her son if he was going out. You can see that the word if is used in the sentence because there is no interrogative word, there is no WH word. Now, if the direct speech contains commands or requests, in reporting commands or requests, the indirect speech is introduced by some words expressing command or request, and the imperative is changed into the infinitive. For example, look at this sentence. Direct speech. Rama said to Arjun, "Go away." Now this sentence is a command. It's an imperative sentence. When it is changed into indirect speech, the sentence becomes, Rama ordered Arjun to go away. So we see that the word expressing command, that is ordered, is used in the sentence, and go becomes to go. It becomes an infinitive in the sentence. Exclamations. Now when your direct speech contains exclamations, then in reporting exclamations and wishes, the direct speech is introduced by some verbs expressing exclamation and wishes. Direct speech. Alice said, "So clever I am." This sentence has an exclamation in it. When this sentence is changed into an indirect speech, the sentence becomes, Alice exclaimed that she was very clever. There is the use of the word expressing exclamation in the sentence. That is the word exclaimed. Also, so clever in the direct speech becomes very clever. So this was about direct and indirect speech. For your homework, change the following direct speech into indirect speech. Kindly complete this homework in your file sheet paper or a notebook that you have made. For changing the sentence from the direct speech into the indirect speech, it is very necessary that you follow the rules that is explained in the video. So with this, we have finished the topic on direct speech and indirect speech. This was all for now. Thank you and take care.